I remember sitting there in class and being like, I know all this.
Yeah.
I know all this, but I haven't known this. And I'm like, what is that? And then I started to understand past life things and all of that. And I hadn't even been open to that because I'd been in a religious structure that wasn't about past lives. And so I was like, is this somebody else's life that I'm seeing? Like, what is this? Am I doing work for the dead? Am I doing like, what is happening? And so I dove deeper, like I wanted to understand more, and I was open.
Welcome to the Crystal Zinn podcast. I believe our bodies are a living map of the entire universe. All the answers reside within. Remember, you are sovereign, whole, and infinitely valuable. And the best gift we can give to the world is our own healing. Join me as we explore holistic tools, spiritual practices, and paradigms that are shifting the way people experience life, business, and relationships. I love to share education on the most recent medical research and cutting-edge technology on anatomy, neurology, trauma, development, and more to give us a foundation in understanding how to align, utilize, and upregulate our physical systems. Ultimately, this podcast is a witness and support to people on their journey of remembering, an inspiration for all of us to keep going, and a reminder that we are not alone. Okay, so welcome to the Crystal Zinn podcast. Today I have Andrea Faye with me. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know we've had a lot of discussion right before this started, so which is great for the listeners because then you can just continue in with our conversation with us. What I always do at the beginning is just tune in, so it gives us a clear start, and the listeners know if you haven't had a chance to come back to your center today, now is the time. So if you're folding laundry or you're somewhere, you can close your eyes, and it's safe to do so. Close your eyes. If you're driving, just take an internal gaze and take one conscious breath, filling up to the bottom of your lungs. Exhale through your mouth. One more like that, asking yourself, finding a place in your body where you can do less. And then today, just feel the feedback around your shoulders, at the surface of your skin, maybe around your head. And we're going to practice feeling that and softening, surrendering. Maybe the ears are tight, the jaw relaxes. Maybe it's your calves or your knees, but you're going to scan your body and just notice your inflammatory response to vibration or energies, and consciously turn it down just a little bit. Good, and then when you feel that, like someone's pouring a vase of clear spring water over the crown of your head, just feel that pour down over your skin, your eyes, your chest, your belly, pouring off your feet into the earth. And if you need a little bit longer, if this is all you needed today, just pause the video and continue on your own. And if you want to join in the podcast with us, come back, take one more clearing breath. And open your eyes. Okay. So we'll do a quick intro if you're cool with that, so people know who you are. I met Andrea through a mutual friend a year ago at my friend's birthday day in her yoga room.
That's right. That was a year ago.
I was wondering if you remembered that.
Sheesh, I feel like I've known you longer though.
I know.
And honestly, I did. That was just a year ago.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I came over on her birthday and she brought you over and she was like, this is my best friend in the whole world. And there was a lot of energy and we were like, ah. And I think I was introduced to several things about you right away. You're a coach, you're a mommy, you talk to spirits all the time. You have a lot of spiritual gifts and just all of these expansive things in the healing world. So I'm wondering what you would like to kind of tell about yourself and a framework for where you come from and how you got here.
Sure. Oh, how I got here. That opened up a whole bunch. As soon as you said that, I'm like, well. My healing journey, like when I really started to like dive into this world was, it's been 10 years now. And it was when I started to experience a lot of just physical limitations. I was in the beauty industry doing hair and makeup and all of that. And my body started to shut down. Like, my jaw wasn't moving. I couldn't open it very wide at all. And then my hands were stiffening up, and I found out I had rheumatoid arthritis, and I had a lot of bone deterioration in parts of my body. And then it was like, okay, what's going on? Why is she having all these things? And they really couldn't find, like, I'd gone to all these specialists, they really couldn't find why or what it was coming from. I recognized that I needed to figure out some practice or some way to like calm my nerves and slow down anxious thinking, and nervousness and depression was kicking in really like severe after having kids and stuff. And so it was like I'd gone through medicine, pharmaceuticals, all of that, and then it was like now I was hitting a really bad block where my career, I couldn't provide, I couldn't even be with my kids because I would have migraines and things kick in and I'd be in bed. And so anyway, so it was like I really got to get down to the bottom of this. And I was going to a jaw specialist because I had no I don't have jaw joints, like they're gone and it's just bone on bone, but a lot of the bone is gone. And so now I can speak just fine and it doesn't hurt because of the work that I've done, but speaking hurt, anything hurt back then. It would cause really bad migraines. And so my jaw specialist asked me one day, he was saying, I've hesitated to even tell you about this, but are you open to alternative options? And I was like, what does that mean?
Really?
Yeah. And he was like, well, I know a hypnotherapist. And in my mind, I was like, hypnotherapy? What, like quack like a duck and bark like a dog? Like what? Like all I knew were like, the shows like hypnotherapists and stuff. I didn't know there was like actually therapy for like hypnosis. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, but I'm open, and I've always been a fairly open person. Like, and I was somewhat aware of the spiritual side of things, but I only understood it from like a religious point. Because I was in the LDS church. And so anyway, so I had that background, but I was like, but I'm open, like at this point, please, like whatever's gonna, because I also didn't have, like I said, I didn't have mobility, so it was Thanksgiving time and I couldn't eat the turkey and I couldn't have all the goods because it wouldn't fit in my mouth. Oh my gosh. So that was another thing. I was like, well, now I can't like eat. So yeah, I'm open to whatever.
Yeah, that's usually what it takes to get us to the point to be like,
yeah. Your basic needs aren't met anymore. Yeah. So yeah. So I went to her, this incredible hypnotherapist, and it was within 2 weeks I had full mobility back, and it was within a month that all my pain was gone. And I was like, what is this? Like, how did you just introduce magic to me? Because it felt like magic.
What kind of hypnotherapy was she doing? Was it actually cognitive therapy stuff, or was it like emotional?
Yeah,
like energy work.
So the hypnotherapy, it was just like your psychological thinking patterns and releasing muscle tension through the body.
Oh, okay.
And so it was all pain relief, and inflammation went down, everything went down. So I went into this like hyper focus of I gotta understand how this works, because I also have a background of I love psychology, and I was going into the psychology field before like going into the beauty industry. And so I was like, well, I understand it from that side, that angle, but I feel like there's so much more here. And she was working so much with my subconscious, and I started to understand more about the subconscious thinking and how that can create these ripple effects in our body. And I dove in deeper and went into neurolinguistics programming. Okay. And so I was getting a degree in hypnotherapy now, and I was going into neurolinguistics, which then took me into Reiki and energy work. And so it was just this whole, it just domino effect. Like it was like I couldn't stop. I was like, whoa, it was activating things in me that I remember sitting there in class and being like, I know all this.
Yeah.
I know all this, but I haven't known this. And I'm like, what is that? And then I started to understand past life things and all of that. And I hadn't even been open to that because I'd been in a religious structure that wasn't about past lives. And so I was like, is this somebody else's life that I'm seeing? Like, what is this? Am I doing work for the dead? Am I doing like, what is happening? And it was just, and so I dove deeper, like I wanted to understand more. And I was open. And I was healing myself as I was learning, and it opened the whole world for me, I guess you could say. I started to understand why like electronics trip around me and always have, or I'd be in my things like that, or why I could see, feel, and hear things, or spirit. And I started to understand how it was happening scientifically, because my brain kind of works like that. I understand like the metaphysics of it, but I have to, my way of embodying it is understanding like what it's doing psychologically and physically for my body. And so that's kind of why I had to go the route that I did, I believe. And so anyway, so here I am 10 years later. I went in with the beauty industry. I decided to expand that into like beauty from the inside out. And I partnered with at the time, like the owner of the salon that I was working in. And we went into adding wellness into it and the whole concept of beauty on the inside out. And then
oh wow, so you didn't have to shift completely right away, you just kind of added.
I added, yeah. And I kind of like, yeah, and I no longer could do like hair because my body just wouldn't go there anymore. And I was fine, I just transitioned into adding wellness into it all, and then I could teach people with hair and stuff, but I wasn't going day in, day out with my hair client anymore. So yeah, so I just transitioned, and then it blossomed from there, and I kept coaching and guiding, and then yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so cool to hear those stories. I think that it's really enlightening for anybody who listens to see the progression and the change, and like I give a voice to that, because like you said, we felt like we've known each other a lot longer, but also the things I know about you, I just assumed or felt like they're always true. Because once a truth is opened, it's like, it's always been true, right? And so to kind of hear that, like, actually, that wasn't always the Andrea that was showing up in the 3D world,
yeah.
It's just fun. I think it's anecdotal. I think those journeys give people permission to be wherever you are, and also an expansive idea of where you could be at any moment.
Oh, totally.
So thank you for sharing that. And also I have so many beautiful observations and thoughts. One was that from the day I met you, and if you're watching my episodes on YouTube, you can actually see us and stuff, which I think is fun. But if you're listening to it, one thing I always noticed was how beautifully you talked about and articulated things, and like how beautiful like your jaw and teeth and lips are. And so it's really funny and cool to like also make those emotion and body code connections, that's where all your pain and your things were processing through. Like that was your body's way of also telling you, here is where all of the bone is now gonna degenerate and grind down bone on bone, and this, you know what I mean? Like our weaknesses are also often where our gifts are coming through.
Oh yeah.
And that's also a fascinating thing. We've also said a lot of times that people who go into that work that you were in are actually very spiritual people, and they're therapists, and it's sort of like they're unconscious of it. And I think that's something we all need to be way more conscious of, is how we're processing our energy and our spiritual gifts and others. And then you get into those unconscious situations and your body will tell you.
Oh, totally. Yeah. If you don't listen, it'll tell you.
You are doing this for people unconsciously. So like, let's get you some knowledge and now do it consciously. Coach people consciously. Use your boundaries consciously, right?
Yeah.
It kind of gives me a giggle, but I'm also sorry that you went through that much pain and that much, you know, that stuff in the body and chronic illness and stuff brings a lot of mind instability with it, right? Like a lot of...
Yeah, it definitely taught me to get really conscious of my mind and my thoughts and my emotions, and like I had to. Yeah. And it still shows up that way when I still get in my busyness and you know, life. It's my body will stop me, and then I have to start looking at everything and go, okay, what's not working and what is working and where do I get to make some adjustments? And yeah, it slows me down, and I'm grateful for it. It's just, it can be painful, you know, when a migraine hits like that. If you've never had a migraine, I don't know if you have, but it is.
I can't empathize with that. I've been around people who describe it, and my mom was having one last week and asked for my help. And I just felt so powerless because I didn't understand it deep in my soul. But I told her all the things that people like you say help, and I gave her my PEMF mat.
Oh, awesome. Good.
I wonder if you'd be willing to let me ask you some questions about the spiritual gifts, about ancestors and past lives.
Of course, yeah.
I get asked these questions all the time, and I dabble in that world. And so I would love to just get your perspective and pick your brain and the experience and natural spiritual gifts you came with. When you started diving deeper into past lives, what's the rhetoric or the way that you like to make sense of that or talk about it? What's a perspective you could offer us?
Oh, great question. It kind of just depends on the verbiage that I use. It's like, it's going to be different for everybody because of the position that they're at. Like, I love that saying, like, how does it even go? I might botch it. Hopefully I don't. But like, Christians call it prayer, Buddhists call it meditation, atheists call it placebo effect, like witches call it spells. It's like we all are doing the same thing and seeing the same thing, but calling it something different, right? And so when I say past lives, or when I even talk about like past life regression, some people may see that just as timelining and working generational work, where they feel like they're doing work for ancestors. And you are, and there's also segments of you in there that are experiencing like a life that you've had previous. And then when we go further into it, we also know, as far as timelines go, past lives and things like that, they're all happening at the same time. But that's a whole other conversation. Okay. So when somebody, so I guess like coming back to your question, like how do I like give light to it, right? Or how do I, it's just understanding that there are segments inside of you or parts inside of you that want to be healed or are asking to be healed in this life. And often our minds or the ego wants to understand more about situations in order to release it, to understand the full dynamic of it or the whole lesson involved in it. It needs to be able to see the situation itself. It needs to understand like who was involved, what was involved, and why. And it's not, I don't feel it's completely necessary for healing, but it supports the healing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. That was a really great way of saying it. It sounds like you're saying the reality is there's a necessary of evolution and healing and understanding in this life. And so the mind needs to make a story surrounding that to sometimes support and aid in the healing. It's not always necessary to release it, but some of those stories may include, when we enter the subject of past life regression, Mormons may understand it as doing work for ancestors, whereas someone else may talk about it as actual pulled apart timelines. Other people may talk about it as different realities happening now, like string theory. I've heard all of these, but I like how you articulated it. Those are just tools of the mind to make sense in supporting the release, but the goal is the healing.
Yeah,
like the oneness, like the gathering ourselves. And I think the point that was really kind of stuck out to me that you made is that there is knowledge about the self and parts in ourself that are there that we're trying to access. And so maybe that's just one tool to access it.
Totally. Yeah, to access it or to get into the, what I call Dharma of it. So that you're not in the constant patterns that you've been in, and you're ready to now be in a new pattern, which is a Dharma. That is often, it's necessary then to like go into that past life or into that space so that you can understand and take that learning into the current moment. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I like how you use the word Dharma. So you're saying Dharma is just a vibration, or your Dharma is a way of being, and you can step into a new Dharma?
Yeah, there's that sense of Dharma. Dharma to me is when you've taken like the karma or placebo effect, or the effect of like our actions or things that have happened, and you flipped it into a space of unconditional love and growth. That's where it becomes Dharma. Does that make sense?
Okay. So Dharma is the evolution of that.
It is the evolution. Okay. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so if we're kind of, when things can't make sense, like in this life, I feel like I need to tell a story to go with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So for instance, I had a thing with like social media and public speaking and just being seen for a long time, where I was terrified, like to the bone. And it's like, why? Like, now I look back at it and it seems so weird. But I was like, why? Like to the bone, I would shake, I would throw up, I would like not be able to, like, I disassociate, like I just could not. It felt like life and death for me. And I didn't know why. And I was just like, but I don't want to feel this. And, you know, I get all this advice, like, just be present or be in the moment and just do it. Or you just got to like step left and choose a different thought process. But it was like viscerally in my body. And it was like, I would be thinking just clear and something would just stop. And so I was like, hey, it's subconscious stuff. And so I was like, well, I can work in my subconscious field because of my training, because I understand how to access that. And so what's really actually there? What is that? And when I started to access it, it was like an intense feeling around the words that came subconsciously were burned. And I was like, gosh, burning hurts. Like what's that about? And so I was like burned, like someone burned me, like someone like, you know, like they did something that made me feel burned, you know, like they hurt me or something. And I was like, no, it seems more. And the deeper I got into it, the more I started to actually experience the burning, like a sensation. And then a smell came to me. And it started to activate. When you can get deep enough into that subconscious, you'll start to activate all the senses, and you'll feel, smell, see, sense, all that was there in that memory that is in the DNA or that is in the body. And so I followed that memory, and that memory, then I was like, because if it's here, what did I need? Like, because when it comes to healing something, unless we can get to a point of like gratitude for it and supplying for our body or our minds what it is that the resource that we needed, until we can get to that point, our subconscious will continue to like run it, right? And continue to circle back to it, because it's like constantly going, I need this resource that I never ever got. So back to that, I was like, what did I need? And I was like, well, I need water to cool this down for one thing, you know? And so I was like, oh, I need that. And then I felt something, it was like the way that spirit or metaphysic communication works, it's really clear and really fast, which you probably know this. It's like a no bullshit. There's no filter, it is fast. And so it's like, okay, so what did I need? And I heard, felt, and knew acceptance. And I was like, okay, so where did I not get accepted? And it felt like burning, because I was like, so I remembered things when I was a little girl, you know, being teased or bullied in school, right? Or things at home that would happen, or places where I didn't really feel accepted. And I was like, but it kept going back. So this is timelining. It kept going further and further back. And I was like, now I'm in the womb. Okay, but now it's going further. Now I'm like, all of a sudden it pulled me into this space because I was so present with the sensations that I was experiencing. It pulled me into this memory or this space, and I was literally up looking down, and I could see all these people, and it was like I was in judgment, I was being judged and accused and placed with all these things, and I could feel and hear the thoughts that I had there, and it was a lot of like just accusations that weren't true about me, and feeling and then I felt this deep sense of abandonment, and I felt like, look for your family, look for your sister and your mother. So I started looking for my sister and my mother, and in the crowd, and I saw my sister, and she was kind of like almost trying to like leave but also watch, and I was like, where's my mom? And then I could go to where she was, and because that's what you can do in this space is you can like leave body and go where you need to go, and I could see her at home. And so I started to like, without going into all the details of the story, but what it came down to is it was back in like the 1600s, and I was being accused or assumed to be something that I wasn't. I was a witch,
right?
And it was only because I told my sister, like, I can sense these things. It was just my intuition that I didn't understand. Wasn't given permission to really understand back in that life.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it scared her, because of the way that the mentality of society back then around intuition and what gifts we so easily attune to now. And so it scared her, it scared my mom, and they spoke to people, and then it became this bigger thing, and it wasn't meant to be in the first place. And so just because I gave voice to who I was or to what I was feeling, I was being burned at the stake. And so then I could start to do the work around like what was really needed there. And instead of feeling like unaccepted, or instead of feeling rejected and disowned basically by my family, I could start to apply compassion there. Like, mom just needed to know it was okay. My sister just needed to know it was safe. I just needed to know like that I was accepted. And so me, the person now in this life, being the adult I am and having the experiences that I have, could pull that energy into that past life experience, do the healing that was needed, and give release or relief to the mind and the physical experience of it all, and then pull that energy really into the present, which is where I get to integrate it, like remembering I am accepted, I am loved, I am all the things that were lacking in that. I have those resources now. And so doing that work really catapulted me into this space where I can just openly talk about like my gifts or things that I can do, or the things that I just naturally experience day in and day out that I'm just so quiet about and so scared to share.
Have you been looking for the adventure of a lifetime? Join me, Elizabeth, and Rachel this June in stunning Sardinia, Italy for a yoga and adventure retreat. My heart has been calling me to this part of the world for a really long time. Connect with your mind, body, and spirit while exploring breathtaking landscapes, rock climbing, boating trips, and more. Early bird pricing is available until January 31st, 2025. Email me, visit my website, or check out my Instagram at Crystal Zinn Yoga for more details. Let's make magic together in Sardinia. So then when you went to reapproach social media and things, did you just notice an immediate difference?
No. It was like the integration was so important. So it's like, for me, it didn't change like that. It required me to be conscious of it. Like, oh, this old me would have believed this, but I'm embodying what I know now and what is true for me here. And so it would be like one step at a time, one interview at a time, one space where I love public speaking. And so it's just speaking and just letting myself speak and be in that. In the moments where I normally would be like, oh, don't share that about yourself. No, I'm like, oh, I see spirit. I'll just share it.
Yeah.
So anyways,
I love that. Wow, that's powerful. And I'm starting to see, I mean, if I can articulate it, that the story you shared showed us that for that tool and for that specific healing and area of your life, it was in the framework of like a past life regression, meaning like it literally was you viewing yourself in a past life, understanding it in the framework of like a timeline and an experience that happened to you and a trauma, and healing that and feeling gratitude for that and whatnot. Whereas in another instance, it might be a different tool, like I went to this place and did work in proxy for an ancestor.
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
but that I have experienced healing in those exact frameworks before, and when it comes up like that, I call it past life regression, another life. And at the same time, there's an aspect to it that I understand is happening now. Like I am that woman in the 1600s now as well, and that's why you can get the crossover of behaving in that way in the now, and you can also step into a different reality in the now. And so I love that you use that story to articulate it, because I think it also helps people understand that it could be literal and is literal for the healing, but you could also understand it in different viewpoints and still access the healing.
Yeah.
And that's also powerful and wow and cool, and I'm just in awe of like how much that can affect you now and how brave it was to go back and relive something like that in your body to gain access to a more full version of yourself.
Yeah.
And your Dharma, like you said. I am curious about the gift of your spirits. Is there something else you wanted to say?
Well, I was just gonna say, when you mentioned generational work, I was like, there's an added piece here. Like I then, I know some people in my family that do a lot of work in like our ancestral work. And so I was like, or they understand where everybody is or came from or stories of our ancestors. So I was like, I'm just curious. Because I also knew what my name was then, or what her name was. So I just started to ask like my family, do we have somebody in our family line of this name? They're like, oh yeah, she was actually pegged to be a witch. And I was like,
so she was also an ancestor?
yes.
Okay.
So that's the beautiful thing too, is it's like you're doing work for them, and I actually, my belief is it's one and the same. Like you are them, they are you, and so you're going to do work for them as you do work for yourself. And so it, whether it's a past life or it was ancestral, like both are in it at the same. So for me,
I love that you said that, because I was listening to someone the other day, and if I can recall who it is, I'll tag it in the show notes, because I want to give her credit, because she expanded my mind to a really interesting, to that concept, which was her understanding when she had an experience similar to that, was that when you go out of your body, it was a near-death experience. She said she understood that because we are all one and we can tap into other people's experiences, she said it's a misunderstanding when people say, I was Cleopatra in another life, because what we're doing is what you said, is we're actually just entering their experience, but there's no separation between them and us. And so you were that ancestor actually, and you can fully embody and have in your body her DNA and are living as though you have that trauma and an experience, because you do, and it was the ancestor. Like, so she was saying, so it was Cleopatra, but because when you step out of your body, like in her near-death experience, she can go into that experience so fully, because we are one. And so that is an interesting paradox. So I was going to ask how you frame up doing work for ancestors, because I have found profound physical shifts in Dharma and effects in my life in the mind frame of doing work for an ancestor. And just, you know, just kind of put a pin in all these different frames, because on the one hand, I have had an experience where I felt like that ancestor was outside of me, and I was having an interaction and an experience with them that completed a Dharma. And I've had other experiences like you just shared, where I I was that. I fully lived that.
Yeah.
And that is how I completed the Dharma. And so maybe as far as it sounds like the beautiful way you talk to your clients is you just talk about it in the framework that makes sense to access the healing.
Yeah.
And that's all really it's good for.
Right.
And I have a shaman I work with all the time that really just always coaches me to say, the quicker you can get to not needing the story, can you always ask the question when you're in a deep healing thing, do I need to know to heal this? Because a lot of times if the answer comes up no, then you don't have to go into those rhetorics. Right. You can just pass it. But when it comes up, yes, I need to know what this is about, then we do have to do the whole dog and pony show.
Totally.
And jump through all those hoops to get there. But the kind of the big question I was hoping to ask you, or just the topic I want to explore while I have you here, is that idea of others being with us. Sometimes there's a lot of fear surrounding that. Sometimes there's a lot of peace and comfort, and like sometimes in my work I consciously call that in, and I want, when I feel in control of them, whoever them is, or certain energies being there. And so I was also wondering if you would offer me what your framework is for we're walking around and there's always others with us.
I will do my best, but for like circle back to it if I'm not quite hitting it. If there's something else you want to know about it, like just I'm an open book here, so
okay.
I'm happy to answer.
Should we start with the story like you did, like when we were on a retreat together and we were having very spiritual experiences with multiple people, so we know that opens multiple portals. Each person brings a thing with them, and a door was opening and closing.
Yeah.
Maybe what was happening for each person there? Like, I guess I could say one person was probably just in their moment, unawares of anything else that was happening, right?
Right. Yeah, that was happening.
What was happening for you there?
So I was aware of so I could see that there were multiple spirits inside the room. Entities, spirits, however you want to, individuals is what I just call them because that's what works for me. There are other individuals in the room that it was almost humorous to some of them, and so I was like the unawareness, those that were in the space of being unaware, that were just like, oh, that's just the wind or something like that. It's like, we can call it that if you want, but then I could see the ones that were opening the doors and playing even with the energy in the room, and just like, you know, because what we're feeling and what we're experiencing also affects them. They affect us, we affect them. And they were enjoying it, whereas some people in our space were going like, what is going on, you know, and even going, and some people just jokingly were like, oh, it's spirit, and then they're going, yeah, it is. Like, they were just having fun with it. And also at one point it did get very sovereign. It got very like, we were, I would say, even sacred, in a sacred kind of space, and so they were opening the doors to move the energy, because it was like, when the energy starts to even get dense, it's like moving it can really assist those in the room. And so
they were being helpful in a sacred way as well.
Yeah, and so they were also doing that. They were playing with it, and then I saw them like just moving the energy in the room and just letting those doors open up. And so I was just aware of like what they were doing, what we were doing. It was like just a big, for me, it's like watching a conference room of people just participating in the activity in a different position. Does that make sense?
They're just peopling. They're just doing their human things. Do you ever, and if you ever feel like someone's participating in a negative way, what do you do in those instances?
So boundaries, like boundaries are really important, physically, mentally, and spiritually, and emotionally. But I think a lot of people forget their spiritual boundaries. They forget that they have permission there to set them. Funny, we were kind of talking about something like this before we got on here, but yeah, that you can place those. Like, you always have permission to place those, and if they are coming in with an energy that doesn't align or doesn't work for you, you can place that boundary, and that's okay. I think a lot of people get stuck in the idea that just because they're spirit, like they get stuck in the idea that they must know more, or they must have more, or I have to listen. And it's like they have their own agenda, and they know what they're bringing for their purpose, and you get to be aligned with yours. And if they're bringing something that's not aligned, you can place that boundary, and it's just simply speaking to it. So they cannot be in a space that they're not welcome. They cannot give into a space unless they're asked to give. And so if they're crossing that boundary, or they're breaking that universal law, you get to place it like, hey, it's not welcome here. Actually, if it has to be that severe, I'm asking you to leave. And you get to leave, and you can be really direct with it, and it does require some directness sometimes.
Yeah.
And then other times it's just like, some people will be like, it's just so overwhelming, there's so much in here. It's like, so ask them to let up a little bit. Just say like, I'm just asking you to back up, give us a little bit space, 50 feet or whatever else, and you'll start to feel like the air will lift a little bit, because sometimes it can feel like suffocating.
So it could even be really useful to use a metaphor, like you said, in a conference room or in my house, and even just saying like, I put them outside and they close the door, or this is too many people in here, I can leave. Like, you can actually apply those same physical 3D things we feel to that energetically and spiritually.
Yeah, totally. And they typically they respect it. It depends on like who you're pulling in, but the ones that I've always worked with, they respect it. They're like, okay. Sometimes they just need clarity. It's almost like they forget we're human. Like, we can't hold as much energy as maybe they can. Or we can, but we're limited because of our ego state and where we're at. And so just reminding them.
That's what I was going to ask you, because on the flip side, even in a positive way, like in a session or in your life where you need some support and help, and you can call in, any fifth dimensional beings or any of my guardians or people in Christ consciousness, or even Christ himself. And when you call that in your experience, are you opening that to anybody who works in that dimension could come help, even people you're not aware of? And then could that also, I guess, be too many people? Like, would your suggestion be to be very specific in that area as well, even when you're calling in positive help in your life?
It just kind of depends on like the position or where you're at, what your preference is, I guess you could say. You can call in, you have access to hundreds of millions of angels at any point, and support, and in whatever alignment or vibration you want. I pull in Christ consciousness, unconditional love. That's what works for me. That's what I feel works for most people, but other people have their own agendas again. But yeah, you have access to that, as big and small as you want. If you're just like, I just want one guide, like, great, pull in that guide. Or I'd love to call in my, deceased grandmother. Wonderful. If she's able or willing, like, let's pull her in. Let's see what guidance she has for you. But the access is always there. The ones, at least from my knowledge, and there may be people that know more. Again, this is like a gift that I have just fully embraced over the last couple years, because before that I was still timid of it. I was still like intimidated by it even, and I was like, I don't even dare mention to people what I know. And now, so knowing that, I still feel like quite a beginner. So I feel like I should state that, because I'm sure somebody out there would be like, well, yeah, or they might have more information. If they do, please, I would love to learn from you. So,
or like a great container way of thinking about it.
So with that in mind, my experience is that you can pull in what you need when you need it. And my other experience is there have been occasions where I've been like, can I pull in this person, or can I pull in this individual that has passed, or this angel or guardian or whatever else, and it's been, they're not available, or they're not accessible right now. And so I'm like, okay. And I don't know why. I don't know everything to that, but I'm still learning. So that's my only thing there.
Thank you for saying that. Okay, I want to go a little superficial before we end really quick, and just some funny anecdotal things. So one thing I've always noticed when spirits are coming through is my nose always runs.
Yeah, so they're coming through.
Yeah, when I sneeze.
That's funny.
And so I just kind of want to like share some of those, like what are little signs and symptoms people should look for on both sides, like also when it gets a little, like you said, heavy or sacred, or people are asked to be doing hard work too. Like the one big experience I had when I started down this awareness of the feedback and interchangeable healing abilities through those who have passed on and other spirits was 7 years ago when I had my last baby, and that's when it became really conscious about an entity being there, and it was a lot more sacred and a little bit deeper as far as me experiencing symptoms like depression and physical things in my body that were not helpful for me. That's how I was made aware of it. So, but then there's also anecdotal things like doors opening and shutting, or electronics turning off, or like I said, whenever I am doing a deep meditation and sneeze or my nose starts running, I'm like, okay, the flow is who's here, what's happening, and I start entering that awareness space. But what are some other signs and symptoms people might notice or look for that we're just unaware of, to just kind of come back and say, I'm safe, I'm always the most powerful person in the room. But like you said, we can call in knowledge, we can call in an interaction, we can also set a boundary for an interaction we have become aware of that we don't want.
Right.
So maybe what are some of those other funny anecdotal things?
So some things that people have like experienced, everybody has it different, right? So like me, I'll start to feel like a lot of energy through my third eye. And some people will feel like pressure on their shoulders, or some people will be like, oh, I know spirit's here, I felt the brushing up on my side. Or I'll witness some of them go up and they'll place their hand, and the person that I'm talking to will be like, I'm like, yeah, they just grabbed your hand. so
they will feel the actual interaction.
Yeah, or there'll be flickering of lights. Some people hear like a buzzing in their ear or ringing.
High ringing.
High ringing, yeah.
Too.
And it'll happen in the left or the right. And some people are like, how do I know if it's this or tinnitus or?
Yeah. How do they know? What do you say to them?
So
what do we say?
When you hear it and you actually take a minute to like go, oh, okay, spirit's here, it'll stop because you're acknowledging them now. If it doesn't stop, that's tinnitus. If it continues to go, it's like, okay, that's just my ear being like it's actually something else I can go to.
So you actually inquire. You actually are like,
I hear you. Okay. Yeah. And you just let them know, like, I for me, I'm like, I honor that you're here, and that's when it just like quiets down. If it gets louder, it's like I'm not listening, and so it's like, okay, I'm gonna listen to you and stop, and that's when it will stop. So
yeah, that reminds me of the Sixth Sense when he finally acknowledges
the
spirits.
That's right.
And then they can give their message. I feel like that is my experience as well, but I'm still trying to remember and get better at it. Just that initial. So if anybody's listening and now they're aware of these things happening,
acknowledge it.
Just acknowledge it.
Don't be scared of it. Acknowledge it. Yeah. And if you are scared about it, like let them know, like, I'm not in a space yet to really embrace this or to really like see you. So please just back up for a minute until I am, and then when you are.
And I think you mentioned that early on your journey where you told me your experience where you said that I can't talk to you right now. I don't know what this is, and then how you slowly delved more deeper into it.
Yeah.
And I think there is some discernment also in where to speak things, not because we're not safe and we don't have the ability to and we shouldn't embrace our gifts, we should, but also just some respect in how other people understand that as well. And so I like those steps that you went through, which were like, we could just, like if I have someone in a session, I can say, do you understand spirit? Can we talk about energy? So there's this kind of energy here, and if then you're okay with that, we can talk about spirit. And then other way we could talk about consciousness, we could talk about entities or individuals or ancestors.
Totally.
And so I feel like there is kind of a felt sense of like we can also be that respectful entity, and we can also be told as a respectful entity, hey, what you said just scared me. Can we talk about that
Bring it
in
down,
a different way?
different space, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're all learning in that. At least I know I'm in that learning. I'm in that learning in the receptive, and I'm also in that learning in the giving, where I've sometimes said too much and it's caused a negative reaction.
Yeah.
Or not said enough, but they've been open to it. So I feel like I'm still in that learning of how do I discern what to give.
I think it's always so important to like just check where the other person's at. Like, what is your, you know, belief system, or where are you at spiritually, you know, so that it can, at least for me as a practitioner, or when I'm working with somebody, I want to meet them where they're at and not force them into a space that really doesn't feel aligned, because then, you know, then all the conversation in the back of their mind's going and they can't actually receive the message or receive whatever it is. I think it happened at the retreat, actually.
Did it?
I think I mentioned something and I remember being like, oh wait, they're not in that, but you grabbed it in the moment and said, yeah, if they're in that, if that's their belief, that's what's actually going to come through. I was like, yes, and you explained it, and I was like, that's it, like you did. It was just, anyways.
I'm a little hyper vigilant about that to a fault, so I'm trying to expand more. That's why I loved having this conversation with you in the middle of like it's actually going to end up being a 5-day fast now, because I knew you'd be here, because I need spaces to expand and people like you to hold that for me where I can expand. Because there's more spaces in my life than not where I'm hyper vigilant and I have to hold those, and I am wary of expanding. And like I said, I might be too timid and conscious still, and so that's where I appreciate you being here and the gift of you sort of letting me,
of course,
you know, and holding that like wider container of it's actually, you're okay here.
You're good. You can expand as much as you want.
I feel good with you.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad.
So, and we were in different positions in that retreat anyway, so we had different roles and hats we were wearing. So that's always a factor.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for speaking to some of those things. It feels really awesome about that, and really validating and really healing, like some of those past life experiences and energies and traumas we hold. It feels healing to be in the presence of others who have stepped through that, and that's how we carry it forward, I think. I wonder, just in ending, if there's anything you want to mention about what's coming up for you and what you're doing right now. I know your offerings are less than they normally are right now.
Right.
But is there anything coming up you're excited about, or offerings that are still open for people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like right now I have, I've opened my books up more for VIP clients. So those are people that I work with for 6 months to a year, depending on what they're needing in their container. And then with that, I do monthly women's circles, and then I have a retreat in June coming up in Sedona, Arizona. So that'll be great. The theme for that is You Are the Muse, and it's really just, it's activating and using what gifts you are in this world, and amongst other things, it's gonna be a really beautiful one. So I'm excited about that. But
I love that. And if you have any last message for anyone, do you feel anything on your heart, like in the collective or in the spiritual realms you work on, that's like, or you work in, that's like, this is kind of what's going on, I want to leave you guys with this message?
I mean, yeah, definitely can do that. Yeah, the collective.
Would you be willing to?
I mean, okay, especially if you're in the world that we're in, if you're like a light worker, you're a coach, a healer, a witch, wherever you are in that, working in this world of like light and healing, it is 100% okay to slow down right now. It's time to remain like I can feel it. I keep getting the message, like it is like you're just feeding your soil right now, and don't go into like the idea that you have to get busy or get going. There's time to like spring things out. It's like you can, but just know you're still feeding your soil. And right now it's really important that we are present with our soil, because we're going to be needed as a collective in a very big way here in the next few months, and that foundation gets to be firm, gets to be strong. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Actually, like Spirit's coming through really quick right now. So developing trust for yourself, leaning into that and calling in experiences where you can like trust yourself more so you can be in your full alignment, your Dharma, your purpose is going to be really important. Like the call is coming and the call is it's here. So just feed your soil, feed your foundation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that. I needed to hear that too. I have found myself in classes saying, now go half speed. But it's probably just because I've needed that.
Yeah.
We
all do right now. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for that. I'll tag in the show notes how people can get a hold of you. But
I am Andrea Faye. You can also go to my website, themodernshamanlife.com.
Okay.
And you can go apply for just connection with me, and I can get you involved in whatever it is that you're needing. So if you come to me and you're like, I'm just looking for community, great, let's get you in my circles every month. Or I'm looking to really like grow and elevate something, like let's just get you wherever I can support you best. Overall, I'm known to alchemize whatever's going on in someone's life. And so if it's, I specialize in working with relationship with self, relationship with your business, relationship with others. And so it's like, understand like that's going to be alchemized and elevated with me. So yeah, reach out there, reach out through my Instagram, and and I'd be happy to work with you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, friends. I know that it feels to me that there's so much more there to be held, but we'll close this container and reach out if you felt incomplete and you want more. So thank you again. Namaste.
Yes, namaste.
Thank you for listening. Connect with me on Instagram at Crystal Zinn Yoga. Subscribe on my website at crystalzinnyoga.com to receive tools and practices for your holistic journey and to be the first to know about offerings, workshops, trainings, and retreats. We live in powerful times that require courage, bravery, compassion, authenticity, community, and grounding. You're not alone. Check out my free content, classes, and meditations on YouTube under Crystal Zinn Yoga, and have a beautiful day. Sat Nam.